So as I told you, Bernie Sanders had another speech interrupted to the point where he couldn't continue by those purporting to be part of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I have a very, very specific idea that we need to explore seriously, which is that the anti-Bernie Sanders tinge of the Black Lives Matter movement recently could be George Soros-funded Astroturf. And I will speak as specifically as possible, Lewis, and then I will allow you, Lewis, to tell me what you think about this. It's widely on record that George Soros, the liberal billionaire, has poured a ton of money into two movements that were instrumental in creating Black Lives Matter and the buzzword. Dating back to January, we knew that George Soros spent over $30 million bankrolling Ferguson demonstrators. And of course, Ferguson relates to Officer Darren Wilson, who killed unarmed teenager Michael Brown and was ultimately not charged. This includes support by George Soros of groups like Color Lines News for Action, Organization for Black Struggle, which then established the Hands Up Coalition. Soros also gave money to the Drug Policy Alliance, which worked on pushing Black Lives Matter as a buzzword, which has since been incorporated into speeches by political figures, including Hillary Clinton, which gets me to the next element of this story, Lewis. Let's talk about Hillary Clinton. George Soros, a huge supporter, of Hillary Clinton's. Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley happen to be the Democratic candidates who have been disrupted by the Black Lives Matter protesters, but not Hillary. And George Soros happens to be one of the top donors to Hillary Clinton's Political Action Committee. This is not about George Soros is bad. This is not about the Black Lives Matter message being bad. This is about the possibility of really ugly AstroTurf, because you're talking here, Lewis, about a movement that is funded by someone who is a big supporter of Hillary's, and you happen to see that movement now becoming very specifically political within the context of the Democratic primary, protesting mostly Bernie Sanders, also Martin O'Malley, but not Hillary Clinton. And the reality is that it's every single Republican who should be protested by the Black Lives Matter movement, but mostly they're focusing on Bernie, which would stand to reason is a way to try to help Hillary Clinton.
It could be argued. It could be also be argued that perhaps they think that it's completely futile to protest Republican events, or perhaps they think it will end with them being imprisoned or whatever. I mean, I can think of any number of reasons. If I did not know anything about the political system in this country and how campaigns are run and what happens behind closed doors, I would say, Dave, this sounds like a pretty crazy conspiracy theory to me. But you know what? It really doesn't sound that far-fetched.
It's amazing to me that the guy who spent his entire career fighting for the exact rights that the Black Lives Matter movement is supposed to be fighting for, marched with Martin Luther King. He's the one who is on the receiving end of these protests. Meanwhile, Donald Trump wants to build the biggest wall the world has ever seen, next to the second only to the Great Wall of China. And in spite of that, Bernie Sanders, who is the best candidate right now for social justice and racial equality and the whole thing, he will be seen now as the guy who was targeted by Black Lives Matter. And this is really, really problematic. So we've got to keep talking about this, and you know that we absolutely will.